It is often said that corporations are morally responsible to some degree for the obesity epidemic, or that companies like McDonald's are doing something morally wrong by promoting fast food. These views presuppose that corporations, like people, are bound by moral obligations. But exactly what, on this view, are corporations morally obligated to do? This question is one of the most important topics in the branch of philosophy known as business ethics, and it is the central question at the heart of the debate about corporate social responsibility. On one side of this debate, you have people who defend the view that a corporation's only imperative is to maximize profits without violating the law or deceiving its customers. An example of a person who defends a view along these lines is the Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman. Friedman claimed that, quote, "There is one and only one social responsibility of business, to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profits, so long as it stays within the rules of the game, which is to say, engages in open and free competition without deception or fraud." The main opposition to Friedman's view comes from people who believe that corporations, or the executives who run them, are obligated to act in socially responsible ways. Friedman argues against this view as follows. If the claim that corporations have a moral obligation to act in socially responsible ways is to be non-trivial, then it must mean that corporate executives are sometimes morally obligated to steer their corporations to act in ways that would not maximize profit and that would run contrary to the desires of the company's stockholders. As Friedman notes, though, any executive that steers a corporation to act in a way that runs contrary to stockholders' desires is not only asking to be fired, but they are essentially taking someone else's money, the stockholders, and putting it to a use that they would disagree with. That seems morally objectionable. A different sort of worry about the idea that corporations should act in a socially responsible way is that corporations who take seriously a need to consult all of the people affected by the corporation's decisions would dilute ownership. Stockholders give a certain amount of money to a corporation in exchange for a say in the direction of a company. Suppose, though, that before deciding whether to take a certain course of action, say deciding to close a factory, the corporation had to consult all of the people who might be affected by the closing of the factory and include those people's input in the decision-making process. The worry, then, is that stockholders' interests won't have a special claim on the corporation's decision-making process, which would defeat the very point of having stockholders in the first place. These are two important arguments in favor of what are sometimes called stockholder theories of business ethics. In the next video, we'll discuss responses to these arguments. However, before we discuss responses to these arguments, I want to raise one worry about whether it's possible to justify the behavior of corporations whose actions contribute to obesity, even if we assume that a stockholder theory is correct. The type of stockholder theory discussed above says that corporations are only obligated to maximize profits so long as they can do so without deceiving or defrauding their customers. However, it is often said that food companies, fast food chains for example, play on our psychological weaknesses. Does this amount to deception? If it does, then even a stockholder theory won't justify these business practices. However, if these business practices don't amount to deception, then a stockholder theory would say that they're fair game. This question of which types of business practices amount to deception will be one question in the background of our discussion of the psychology of eating in week 6. Until we get there, though, it's worth keeping in mind that attending to the details of how exactly food companies conduct their business and how they convince customers to buy their products is important in evaluating whether those companies are acting ethically.